fourth straight game in which the Devils had to send their game into overtime. And after this matchup against the Maple Leafs, they have now lost 7 of their last 9. Is it time to be concerned? And I also feel bad for Sheldon Keefe. He wants to get that win against his former club, but he's going to have to wait now. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credentialed media member, Trey Matthews. The old saying is third time's the charm, right? Well, that was not the case for the New Jersey Devils. Third time playing the Toronto Maple Leafs this season. Third time they came out on the losing end. This time by a score of 4-3 in overtime. And poor Sheldon Keefe. I'm sure he is yearning for his first win against the Maple Leafs, his former club, but he's going to have to wait until next season or maybe until the playoffs if the Devils do end up facing the Maple Leafs. I'm not really going to bet on that particular matchup for multiple reasons, but that's for a discussion for another time. In the first segment, I will share my main takeaways from the matchup, and then in the second segment, we're going to address the state of the Devils because they have dropped 7 of their last 9, but it's worth mentioning that their previous 4 games, including this one, have gone into overtime. So it's not like they're walking away with nothing, but let's face it, they're not really playing up to their full potential. And then in the third and final segment, like I do with every post-game recap episode, I will compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade. First, some housekeeping. Going back to Sheldon Keefe, the man of the hour. His first time being back in Toronto since being fired. We're going to hear from Sheldon Keefe in the second segment because he spoke to the media about the state of his team, and he did have some interesting talking points. But I first want to discuss this because this is probably the only time in which I can talk about it. I think Toronto made a mistake firing Sheldon Keefe. I don't think he was the main issue up in Toronto. That's just my outside perspective on the matter because the Toronto Maple Leafs overcame a 3-1 deficit, took the Boston Bruins to Game 7, and it took a David Pastrnak goal in overtime to send the Maple Leafs home packing. Not only that, the season before, Sheldon Keefe led the Maple Leafs to the second round for the first time since 2004. Incredible. And going back to last year's playoffs, William Nylander missed some time. That's probably one of their more consistent playoff performers. And Austin Matthews, he also missed a few games. The fact that the Maple Leafs were down 3-1 at one point and were able to overcome that deficit and send it to Game 7, I'm sorry, that's a good coaching job by Sheldon Keefe. I don't think he deserved the boot because once again, William Nylander missed time. Austin Matthews missed time. That's probably the only time I'm going to talk about it. Let's go back to the present. I am glad he is with the Devils, but Toronto, I know you're doing well with Craig Berube, but honestly, you screwed up. All right. Some other housekeeping after that tangent. John Tavares, he got injured at a recent Maple Leafs practice, so he did not play in this matchup. I am wishing him the best. I don't know the severity of his injury, and I would like to see the Leafs get one of their alternate captains back. Stefan Noesen is still out with illness. As a result, the Devils called up Brian Hallinan from the Utica Comets. Last season, Hallinan had 29 points, 20 goals, 9 assists in 35 game appearances. This season, in 31 games played for Utica, he has racked up 21 points, 13 goals, 8 assists. Hallinan, maybe he can shake up the bottom six. He didn't play in this matchup, but if Stefan Nason is still out with his illness and if it's going to take some time for him to get back, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Hallinan be utilized in a particular game. All right. My overall takeaway from this particular matchup is that the Devils played well in spurts. Like there was times when the Devils were putting full pressure on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then there were times when the Maple Leafs were returning the favor. They were putting pressure on the Devils. And I think the biggest thing that Ken Danico said during the broadcast is that despite the hurdles that the Devils had to overcome, they still stayed true to themselves. And you can see that they're still playing with speed. They're utilizing their star players correctly. We're going to talk about them right now because Devils versus Maple Leafs, that's not really going to sell headlines all that much. Not really a rivalry, but I said one of the reasons why Sheldon Keefe might see success with the Devils is because they also have a core four similar to the Maple Leafs. Obviously, the Maple Leafs core four consists of Austin Matthews, William Nylander, John Tavares, and Mitch Marner. Tavares didn't play in this game, but the Devils' core four consists of Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and Timo Meier. Maybe you could say Dougie Hamilton, but I'm just going to stick to those four particular players. And all four of those players played really well in this game. Jack Hughes, he got the opening goal in the first period. And might I add, sick mitts by Jack Hughes because he was given the puck close to Joseph Woll, and Hughes made Woll look outright foolish, just being extra patient and just got it right past him. See, why can't Jack Hughes do that in a shootout situation? He could do that 5-on-5 on the power play, whatever circumstance you throw him into, but once the shootout occurs, he struggles. But that was incredible. I just got to say. And Jonathan Kovacevic also picked up an assist in that particular play. Then the second period, William Nylander, he got the equalizer goal. But a few minutes later, Nico Hischier, he answered on the power play. And then the third period, it belonged to Austin Matthews because he retaliated. He also picked up a power play goal. It was a questionable call assessed to Jonas Siegenthaler, and Bill, Dano, and Bryce. They were debating on air. They were a little frustrated. Siegenthaler was assessed tripping against Matthews, and they felt as though it was a soft call, but nonetheless, Matthews got a power play goal. Nylander got the primary assist. So Nylander, similar to Hughes, already has a multi-point outing. Then Nico Hischier, once again, Devils were given a power play of themselves a couple minutes later, and Nico just chugging through traffic found the back of the net. His first goal in the second period was nice, but that one on the power play, that was clutch because the Devils regained the lead 3-2, but Austin Matthews, this, in my opinion, was the play of the night. Sharp angle, short side goal. There's only a handful of players that can find the back of the net in that sort of aspect. I'd say Austin Matthews, Alex Ovechkin, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon. There aren't that many. And Austin Matthews, that was just a tough play. You just give him an inch of breathing room, he's going to capitalize on it. He scored 69 goals last season, and he demonstrated why he was able to do so, which also frustrated me just a little bit because remember the last time these two teams played each other, it was at the Prudential Center, and aside from his game-winning goal in overtime, Austin Matthews was basically whipping at a lot of shots that he usually capitalizes on. The Devils were given so many lives. They were like a cat with 9 lives, but Austin Matthews made him pay in overtime. I really wanted to see that version of Austin Matthews, but we didn't really get it. He came up clutch in the third period. Game goes into overtime. Luke Hughes made an error on a change, and William Nylander was wide open, and he ended the game right then and there. So Nylander had a 3-point outing, but Jack Hughes also had a 3-point outing. Worth mentioning, that is Jack Hughes' 10th 3-point outing this season. Timo Meier, even though he walked away with 1 point, it was the primary assist on Nico Hischier's goal. Meier had a really good game. He was blocking shots. He was not afraid to put his body on the line. Similar to what I said a few moments ago, that's one of the reasons why I consider Timo Meier as a part of the core four, just because he makes the right moves to put the Devils in a good position. And people have been complaining about the defensive pairing of Dougie Hamilton and Brendan Dillon. Well, courtesy of Daniel Moya, here's what he put out on social media. He said, in regards to possibly making a change, the Devils should do absolutely nothing. That's been their best pairing since Christmas. And he says he believes the narrative derives from their quote-unquote loose play style, since they're more offensive than the other pairs. And he put out the numbers. Dougie Hamilton and Brendan Dillon, that pairing, expected goals for 6.45. That leads those three defensive pairings. So you got Jonas Siegenthaler, Jonathan Kovacevic, then Brett Pesce and Luke Hughes. Dougie and Dillon lead in the expected goals for category, and then expected goals against, it's the lowest, 4.66. Expected goals for percentage, also the highest. So take that however you want to take it. But it was just a back and forth affair. Devils put pressure on the Maple Leafs, and the Maple Leafs returned the favor in some sort of aspects. That's just what happens when you're going up against one of the best teams in the Atlantic Division. I said it a few episodes ago, the Devils were going to be challenged. But we're going to talk about the Devils collectively the past few weeks. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job seen on other sites. Indeed sponsor jobs, put your post at the top of the page, and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've actually used Indeed before to book myself some play-by-play gigs. I use it to this very day. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support my show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed, is all you need. All right. Since December 28th, the Devils have lost 7 of their last 9. 3 of them being in overtime. So it's not like the Devils are coming out empty-handed. This season, the Devils are 2-0-6 in overtime. And when leading after the second period, the Devils have a record of 21-0-2. Before this game against the Maple Leafs, it was 21-0-1 because the Devils were leading after the second period. Now, before I give my thoughts of the state that the Devils are currently in, here's what Sheldon Keefe had to say to the media post-game. Take a listen.
Now, Sheldon, this is obviously not the result you were looking for here tonight in Toronto, but what do you just make of a game like this against a very desperate Toronto team?
Oh, yeah. We led for most of the game. I thought the guys managed it pretty well. Obviously knew that they were going to have their pushes, and for the most part, I thought we kept things to the outside, did a pretty good job of that. Made a mistake. You can't let Matthews have a puck like that, and it's still to the outside, but he's going to be able to score from there. So that one hurts, and then the way we manage the overtime goes against everything we've talked about in terms of managing it. The one hits the post and could go in, it changes everything. But we had the puck again, and just how we managed that is just unacceptable, and that gets you beat.
Well, Sheldon, I know this game's tough to find some positives in it, but when you see an effort from the captain scoring 2 power play goals, the way he played and the way he defended, what can you say about his game tonight?
Well, the game is not tough to find positives in. There's lots of positives here. I mean, we're on the road playing against a good team, and we led for most of the hockey game. As you said, our captain comes up big with some big goals, but our power play, comes through for us. Jack scores early in the game. Like, there's lots of good things, and our guys played hard tonight. Like I said, they have world-class players, and you make mistakes. There's a mistake on the Nylander goal, the first one, and a mistake on the Matthews goal, to tie the game. Those are things that you can't make those mistakes against this team. But there's a ton of positives here today. It's another good, hard road point for our guys against a good team.
Okay. So Sheldon Keefe said there was a lot of positivity in this particular matchup against the Maple Leafs, and I do agree with them. There was a lot of positivities to take away from this particular matchup. I literally talked about it in the first segment. Jack Hughes, he got his 10th 3-point outing of the season. Nico Hischier, he had 2 power play goals, and the Devils always had an answer to Austin Matthews and William Nylander. Unfortunately, Nylander got the game-winning goal in overtime. Devils made a mistake at the wrong possible time, but it was a good competitive game, and I was thoroughly entertained. It's not like the Devils got wiped out and they lost like 5-2. It was nothing like that. So I do agree with Sheldon Keefe, which is let's not look at it in that sort of negative aspect. But on the other side of that, I can see why people are a little frustrated with the Devils' performance the last few games. So Alex Chavancy, who is the host of Devils on the Rush podcast and also a colleague of mine over at Pucks and Pitchforks, he put this out on social media and said, coming away with 4 out of 6 points against Tampa Bay, Florida, and Toronto ain't bad, but definitely let a point or two on the table. Schedule gets easier the rest of the month, but still not really liking what I'm seeing from the Devils since Christmas. Because like I said, since December 28th, the Devils have dropped 7 of their last 9. Now, Nick Cahill, who works for MSG, he says on his social media platform that he is always behind Bill and Dano during the broadcast. He responded to that tweet and said, get where you're coming from, but 3-4-2 since Christmas, if that ends up being the worst stretch of the season, I'd sign up for it any day and twice on Sunday. And I see both sides of the argument, which is, look, the Devils have not been playing well the past few weeks, and they're not really winning all that consistently. However, I think the main difference from this year's Devils team and last year's Devils team is points to play with. That was so crucial during the 2022-2023 season because during that historic showing, the Devils went on a 13-game winning streak at one point. So they were racking up a boatload of points. And if you recall, in late December and early January, they went on a huge slump to the point where it was just a drag for them to win one game in however many outings. Last season, the Devils were inconsistent, but they didn't really have many points to play with. This time around, yes, the Devils have dropped 7 of their last 9, but 4 of those games went into overtime. In fact, 4 straight games have gone into overtime. I don't know what the record is, but the Devils love adding extra mileage to their matchups as of late. But the point I'm just trying to make is that 5 out of those 9 games, the Devils have walked away with something at least. And something is better than nothing. And I think that was the biggest issue last season for Devils, which is they had little to no points to play with. And once they had their backs against the wall late into the season, they basically had to win out if they wanted any chance to even get into a wild card position. And obviously, that did not happen. This time around, a little different. Since the Devils continue to generate points every now and again, they're still in a comfortable position. So if we look at the Metropolitan Division, the Capitals are first with 65 points, followed by the Devils with 58 points. The Hurricanes have dropped their last 2 games as well, so they have 55 points. Blue Jackets are on a 6-game winning streak, and they have 50 points. I don't know how much longer that can last, but after that, it's basically who's going to finish bottom in the Metropolitan Division. Flyers have 46, Rangers have 45, Penguins have 44, Islanders have 41. Barring a miraculous turnaround, I don't think any of those 4 teams pose any threat. But the Blue Jackets winning 6 straight games and having 50 points, something to take note of. But focusing on the Devils, they have 58 points. They're second in the Metro. And even if the Hurricanes were to pass them the next couple of days, they still have a decent amount of points ahead of the Blue Jackets. So that's just what I want you to take note of, which is, yes, the Devils aren't performing well. They need to perform better, but their worst is still better than most people's best. Are they a championship contending team? I don't really know. I have my doubts, but they're certainly a playoff team. If they want to become Stanley Cup contenders, Tom Fitzgerald is going to have to make a few moves here and there to add some more depth to the bottom six. I think that's the biggest issue that they do need to repair. But for the time being, as currently constructed, this Devils team is still a playoff team, and at least they're walking away with something in these matchups. Now, come playoff time, that's not going to matter, because if you lose in overtime, you lose the game. No points. I don't think there's any reason to be concerned. I think the Devils are still in a pretty good position, and they'll turn around sooner rather than later. But yes, they've hit a slump. But once again, I think a lot of teams would love to have the Devils, quote unquote, struggles compared to their own, because some teams walk away with nothing during a tough stretch of games. Let me put that into perspective. All right. I'm going to compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Game Time. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new features, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out all the fluff so you can only receive incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've actually used Game Time before to purchase myself some baseball and basketball tickets. Had a great time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time, everybody. All right, let's compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade, and get out of here. Shots on goal differential 41-24 in favor of Toronto. Once again, Jacob Markstrom was strong in between the pipes. He was keeping his team in it. Toronto, they were hitting on all cylinders, systems go, especially in the third period, but at least the Devils had some lengthy offensive shifts of their own, but they came out on the losing end. Power plays, Devils were 2 for 3 thanks to Nico Hischier. Toronto 1 for 2 thanks to Austin Matthews. Hits 25-14 in favor of Toronto. Giveaways 17-15 in favor of Toronto. Takeaways 4-2 in favor of Toronto. Blocked shots 21-16 in favor of the Devils. Time spent in the penalty box 6-4 in favor of Toronto. All right. This one is a tough one. If I had to give the Devils a letter grade, I will give them a C+. I don't feel comfortable enough giving them a B just because they came out on the lose again, and it seems like they ran out of gas toward the end, and Luke Hughes made a mistake trying to peel off and go for a change, but it happens. That I don't know what else to say. And similar to what Sheldon Keefe said in the second segment, it was still a good game. And I think the Devils' core four of Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, and Timo Meier, all of them had really good outings, and all of them walked away with at least a point. And going up against Austin Matthews, William Nylander, Mitch Marner, it's never an easy battle. So I do feel bad for Sheldon Keefe. Unfortunately, he's not going to get his first win against the Maple Leafs until most likely next season. Not betting on a Maple Leafs and Devils playoff matchup, but we will see what happens. But let me know your thoughts. Are you concerned with how the Devils are right now? If so, what needs to change? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.